Edgar Allan Poe's graves and house in Baltimore, Maryland. At morn, at noon, at twilight dim, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. This is from the website that I'll include links for in the description below. Although Richmond is the place Poe most considered home, Baltimore defines the beginning and the end of his life. When Poe was originally buried in 1849, he was placed in an unmarked grave. Over the years, the site became overgrown with weeds. Eventually, George W. Spence, the sexton, placed there a small block of sandstone bearing a carved number 80. Reports of Poe's anonymous and unkept grave began to circulate, and in 1860 Maria Clem wrote to Neilson from Alexandria, Virginia. This note of concern seems to have spurred Neilson to action. He appears to have assured Mrs. Clem that Poe was buried in the family lot and that he would take care that the grave was better maintained. Shortly after, he ordered a marble headstone, which was in the process of being carved by Hugh Sisson. Due to the weight of the stones and the difficulty of moving them, the monument yard was next to the railroad line. Before it could be installed, the recently completed stone was destroyed in an accident in which a train ran off the tracks and directly through the yard. Not being a wealthy man, Neilson did not order a second stone. It survives only in a pencil sketch by Charles H. Dimmock. The 3-foot-high white Italian marble tablet was inscribed with an epitaph in Latin that was translated to read, "Here at last he is happy. Edgar Allan Poe, died October 7, 1849. The reverse side of the stone also had a Latin translated as "Spare these remains." As the stones had not yet been placed over Poe's grave, the setting for the sketch is fanciful. In no way does it indicate the location of Poe's place of burial. By 1865, a movement had begun under the leadership of Miss Sarah Sigourney Rice to provide for a new monument to Baltimore's neglected poet. This time only one accident befell his creation. Poe's birthday is erroneously given as January 20 rather than January 19. After some discussion on the most appropriate location for the imposing edifice, it was decided that it would be best to use the front corner of the cemetery. The church, built around 1855, would have blocked the view of the grave from the street if Poe was left in his grandfather's lot. There was also a small problem of securing rights to enough surrounding space, most of which was already occupied. The monument was dedicated on November 17, 1875. The remains of Virginia Poe, buried in 1847 in New York, were brought to Baltimore and added to those of Poe and Maria Clem in 1885. Thus, the three who had struggled together as a family for so many years were reunited for eternity. In 1913, Orrin C. Painter placed another stone intended to mark Poe's original burial site in the rear of the church. For uncertain reasons, this stone was initially misplaced completely outside of the Poe family lot. It was quickly moved to a more reasonable but still dubious location. Perhaps in part due to this confusion, but mostly because people simply love a good mystery, a strange rumor has persisted that the memorial committee failed to exhume Poe's remains, instead moving those of some other poor soul. The improbability of this notion is obvious when one realizes that the exhumation in 1875 was supervised by George W. Spence, the man who buried Poe in 1849, and Poe's cousin, Neilson Poe, who attended the original funeral. In the intervening 25 years, both men had frequently been called upon to take visitors to see Edgar's grave and were unlikely to have had the opportunity to forget the correct spot. Although no headstone ever marked Poe's grave, the cemetery itself is quite small, and the traditional site of the grave is framed by the marble slab of the Reverend Patrick Allison at the left and a prominent mausoleum behind. And you can see the mausoleum there, and they talk about it being another temple. There are a lot of different graves in there. They're very, very old. It was very interesting to walk around and explore. It's funny to find these cemeteries like in the middle of the city. They even had a stone bench. And I thought it was interesting how the stone seems to have like warped down in the middle, either over time or was it always that way? I don't know. But there was a information thing up there on that, and you can go there and read more. I didn't include all of them. It left a lot for you to go and explore on your own. But they had some really interesting headstones. I didn't know that Edgar Allan Poe had different graves, so it was interesting that there was different markers. And you had to wonder, which one is it that he's buried in? So if you believe it, then he was actually exhumed and put into the monument that you saw earlier. But this is the one that is very iconic. So you have the carved raven. It's the best known line from Poe's best known poem, "Quoth the Raven Nevermore." The rest of the inscription reads original burial place of Edgar Allan Poe from October 9th, 1849 until November 17th, 1875. The Edgar Allan Poe House is a National Historic Landmark, and it's open to visitors throughout the year. Poe's home is in excellent state of preservation, with much of the exterior and interior original fabric from the 1833 to 1835 period, when Edgar lived there with his aunt, grandmother, and 2 cousins. While the house is not furnished, visitors walk on the same floors, stairs, and wander within the original plaster walls and woodwork that Edgar lived with. Exhibits tell the story of Edgar Allan Poe's life and death in Baltimore, and significant artifacts such as Edgar's portable writing desk and chair, and a telescope, china, and glassware used by Edgar when living with the Allan family in Richmond, Virginia. Changing exhibits and tours are scheduled from time to time. There is a little bed and everything in the top floor room, so you can see how cramped and small it was. While the exact dates of composition for Poe's works is often complicated, it is reasonable to assume a number of stories, poems, and reviews were written by Poe during his stay on Amity Street. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoy this little tour of Poe's graves and his house. I'll put links down in the description below for more information. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.